This morning we're joined by Kwame Gyan, who is a senior law lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School and former legal consultant to the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Professor Kwesi Aning is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research, Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. He's joined us on phone. Timothy Anyidoho, who's the Greater Accra Regional Lands Officer, will be joining us in studios shortly. Prof. Kwesi Aning, Kwame Gyan, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Very good morning to you.
I mean, before I get to Professor Aning to look at, the security implications and all, Kwame Gyan, why are we faced with this? I mean, we thought we had put in place new laws and everything to deal with challenges of double sale of land and all. So why are we faced with this menace?
Winston, we will talk about the details as we go.
So briefly, yes, just.
But let me start with a biblical verse. Ecclesiastes. If you go to Ecclesiastes, I checked, it's chapter 8, verse 11.
Okay.
And there are different translations, but there's a particular translation that I think is very apt for what I want to use this verse for. The New Living Translation. The New Living Translation talks about a situation where, and now let me read it for you and your listeners. When a crime is not punished quickly, people feel it is safe to do wrong. I think that's one of the reasons why we are where we are. We pass the laws, but you also have to act swiftly when there is an infraction. Swiftly. So in a situation where you are not able to swiftly deal with lawbreakers and publicize the steps you have taken against those who break the law, you create an impression that you have the law nicely in the books, but you would not enforce the laws.
Okay.
And generally, it's not just about the land sector. It's generally one of the issues in this country. We have very fine laws, but when the people who make the laws have made the laws, those who have to enforce the laws have to do what they have to do. But that's not all. But I'm telling you, this is just my preface to the discussion.
I'll get back to you. Let me get to Professor Kwesi Aning because it has a lot of security implications. I'd like us to start from the security implications by first finding out, so who are those behind these people and what makes them so powerful, Professor Kwesi Aning?
No, I think my colleague, Mr. Gyan, has captured it. No one individual or group can be powerful if there are no people who connive with them, collude with them, that deliberately ensure that the law is not applied. So you mentioned Ashalibotwe. I'm going to talk about the Gyan South municipality.
Okay.
And I'm going to mention a couple of names of gangsters who over time have become the law enforcement. Over time, even when a court of competent jurisdiction has punished them, can flout that decision and become even more powerful. And I'm going to mention a particular police district and challenge the commissioner or whoever is head there to come to my office to get appropriate details. Because it is not just a bunch of gangsters who think they can challenge the authority of the state. It's because people located within the interstices of the state themselves allow these things to go on. That's number one. Number two is that when the statutory law enforcement agencies are perceived to be either unwilling, incapable, understaffed, under-equipped, then people desperately to protect their lands also actually commit similar crimes by hiring more powerful landguards to protect their property.
Okay.
And because small arms are available, the explosives are available. We are now seeing landguards willing and prepared to exchange fire with the statutory security force. And therein lies what happened a couple of days ago, where they thought they were so empowered. Is that because the local community supports them? And in more cases than not, local communities support them because the incentives, the monies that they get from their criminal enterprises are invested within the communities.
Okay.
They are seen as local Robin Hoods. They are seen as people that you can take your problems to and they will resolve it. So there's a certain side legality or acceptability. Let them not use the word legality. But quasi acceptability of the criminal enterprises and the use of violence as a tool to intimidate and to flout the law by ordinary people. Because the law enforcement agencies take a long time to react. Now, when they react and they use credible force, then of course we see the loss of life or lives. And in this case, I can assure you, I make no apologies for the actions of the Ghana Police Service. So let me give you a couple of examples.
Please go ahead.
At the Ghana South municipality, there are 3 individuals, okay, well-established land guards who in cahoots with a businessman steal people's lands and create the impression that this businessman called Alaji can sell, that the lands belong to him and he can sell them legitimately. So if you go to Peace Town, and I think here it is the police commander at Kaswa that I'm speaking to now. If you go to Peace Town in the Ghana South municipality, there's a major criminal there called Black. I've said this over the past 15 years. Black, who is located in Galilea, Manhiame. Old gangster. And please, Chief, if you are listening to me, everybody there knows him. Galilea, Manhiame. And then Red Moro at Tomofa. Okay, these two steal people's lands. They managed to get some documentation through this Alaji that people are buying these lands. And on this particular case, I've spoken about it for close to 15 years. The question that it raises is that should I also use my contacts to get people who are better armed to go and face these people? That does not make it right. So we are seeing the acceptability and the expansion of a group of individuals who think they can legitimately threaten honest citizens, steal their properties, threaten to murder them, and sow so much fear in society that they become a law unto themselves. The unfortunate thing is that next year, a lot of these people will be in very high demand as vigilantes. Okay, so they straddle multiple economic spheres. But what drives them, what the common defining characteristic is their willingness and preparedness to use inordinate force to get what they wish for.
Now, let me just find out about, you talked about some actors within the state, and you've also talked about 2024 being in high demand when I asked who uses these persons. Let's get into some more specifics. So apart from the fact that they believe sometimes the law enforcement agencies may take too long to act or are not properly resourced, who within the state apparatus is helping these persons to feel bold enough to engage in the activities they engage in?
No. Now, I'm giving you a specific example in this large area in the south where Red Moro, Alaji, and Black have operated for close to 20 years. So let me get into the specifics.
Okay.
I took these people to court for theft of my property. They were punished. But they subsequently have come back and have become more powerful. This is basically spitting on the judiciary and then demonstrating that law enforcement cannot deliver the protection of people's investment and lives and properties that people need. Okay, now, if you go to every single municipality, there are people who deal with lands. They have access to the proper documents. So, I mean, we see buildings where people have written, stop work by order, blah, blah, blah. Who writes those things? Who enforces them? Now, when agents of the state become too frightened to do their work, then it becomes dangerous. We cannot and must not have multiple locations or sites of authority within one state. When the constitutionally mandated authority choose challenged and people question their capacity to provide protection, then in desperation, ordinary people will turn away from the state and go to land guards for the protection of their property. So, police commander of Kaswa, we know where Red is. We know where Red Moro is. We know where Black is. Send somebody, call me, and let us give you the detail. Because, see, the state must be strong enough to punish and crush these people. So you asked about the security side. Yes. Where do they get their guns from? Who supplies them? Okay, we need to understand the supply chain. Who are the actors? Where are the leakages coming from? Okay, where are they buying the bullets from? Where do they hide them when they are not doing their operations? Okay, it cannot be right that law enforcement intelligence does not have access to this information.
Now, when you say that in 2024 they will be in high demand, yes, we know 2024 is an election year. Are you suggesting that the politicians are going to use these people to
where
engage?
Do the land guards, where do the vigilantes come from?
Tell me.
I don't know. But they don't come from Togo. They don't come from Burkina Faso. These are people who are located within our own country.
They come from the land guards?
Quite a substantial number of them. You see them transform themselves to what do they call that thing? Keep fit clubs, all kinds of things. Okay? And I like the biblical quotation that my co-panelist started with. When crime begins and it is not punished, it is not clamped down upon, it becomes accepted. That becomes the norm. Okay, and I've always said this on your program, that when we talk corruption, but very little is done to punish the corrupt. Okay, it becomes as if it is just rhetorical. People take it as part of their normal business. Landguardism has been spoken of and about as long as I returned to Ghana in 1999. And it's getting worse. We are increasing the numbers of law enforcement officers that we recruit, that we train, that we arm with the taxpayers' money. So if the taxpayer, who out of his or her savings is purchasing land and is an honest citizen of Ghana, that person cannot build within 2 or even 3 years. You build slowly because your wages and your other expenditures means that you cannot perform magic. So we need to protect these people so that their investments towards their pension can be protected.
So
because all the rhetoric about foreign direct investment, it won't work when those investments cannot be protected.
Finally, so how do we deal with them? How do we get them out of our way?
Let the law work. Let us use the intelligence that we brag that we have. Let's go after them. I know the judiciary will do their bit. Let's use the intelligence, gather the evidence, put them before a court of competence, jurisdiction, and punish them. When Red Moro, when Black, when Alaji are thrown into prison, it will send a powerful signal. This man that Shatawale has sang a song about, I don't know the lyrics, whether it was one of criticism or praise. But you see, I think there is an oversight institution that checks the lyrics and the content of films, blah, 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 blah. When landguards are praised in danceable songs, I mean, I've not listened to the songs, so I don't know. But were he to be praised, and young people see this person as their role model, then we are in trouble. Then we are in trouble.
Professor Kwesi Aning, thank you.
It's always.
Thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Professor Kwesi Aning, who is Director, Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. So let me say a special welcome to our listeners in Kumasi on Love 99.5 FM. Let's get into the conversation. Kwame Gyan is in studio, so is Timothy Anyidoho. So, Timothy, Kwame Gyan, we've all been here and we've talked about the Land Act. We have talked about all the good things in there, how it's going to prevent double sale of land, the punitive measures in there. And so, for once, we felt we were going to deal with this. But it looks like it's never going away. What's still causing people double sale and people engaging the services of these landguards? Timothy.
Well, it's an interesting conversation with Professor Anin. It gives you a certain dimension to it. And anytime we talk about landguard as a topic, I ask whether it's just pure crime that we are trying to mix with land to justify its cause. And when you hear his conversation, he says these people may be used for other activities also. The land issue has its antecedents in certain actions. You said, for instance, if a chief sells the land to two different people, it's a tussle that will lead to one party wanting to protect it and the other party wanting to have it. Yes, its antecedents are in land. You talked about the Land Act, for instance. You talked about Section 12 is what you are referring to.
Yes.
He talked about somebody being prosecuted and going to jail and coming back after a short while. Before this Land Act came, the people were prosecuted under the General Criminal Offences Act, and they were they could see some of these things as misdemeanors. Now the Act says between 5 to 15 years, assuming it happened since 2020. Now, the courts have now been given a certain limit time by which they can use and raise these offences related to land to a certain level. It's just 2 years since, or 2 years thereabouts. If these offences were done now, what opportunity does the Land Act give us? It gives us a 5 to 15 years window by which the courts can look at prosecuting people, which is fairly different from what may have happened in the past. We don't know under which law, which actions that the people were put in. The customary land secretariats, for instance, created under the Land Act, would ensure that the families, the stools, have their own base of what they are given. So the excuse that I gave it, I forgot, I now remember, all those things we would begin to deal with. I always say laws, you must be patient with the fruits of laws.
Timothy.
Yes.
Let's get to the Land Act.
Yes.
Section 12,
Yes.
protection of land and interest in land.
Yes.
A person who, subsection 1, a
Yes.
person who, A, unlawfully exercises or purpose to exercise supervision
Yes.
or control of land development in a location,
Yes.
has no interest in land and extorts money or other benefits from a person who has interest in land, or prevents a developer from developing the land, or personally or through another person unlawfully uses force or violence to prevent a person who has an interest in land from having access to the land, or drives away that person with an interest in land from the land, commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a term of imprisonment not less than 5 years and not more than 15 years.
Yes.
And so, why is it difficult?
Who does prosecutions in this country? AGs, the police.
Yeah.
So the person has done the thing wrong. Mind you, he has to go to a process of prosecution. They have to go to courts. The court has to find them. And that's what Professor Aning kept reminding us. The judiciary has its part to play. The police have their part to play. For the land administration side, and I'm sure when my senior lawyer Kwame Gyan begins to speak, the fact that you make registration easy, determination of title easy, that will be the role that land administrators will have to play in able to resolve who owns what to assist the courts in taking their decisions. As you said, as you read this, assuming Red went to do this on behalf of somebody, I'm just borrowing Professor Aning's nomenclature, did the prosecution extend to those who have deployed or employed the person to come there? The law says this should be done. So the police must take that path. Take not only the person doing it, but the people who have emboldened or sent them to do that. If all of them were in jail for between 5 and 15 years, depending on what the court, if they are proved guilty, will we see them today on the land? We won't see them on the land. So the prosecution, the acts, they must be between the prosecutors, the courts, and they must ensure that these things are done. And that's what Professor Aning was saying, that he goes to jail. If he went to jail for 3 years and he's back, why wouldn't he be emboldened? And that doesn't become an issue solely with the land administration bit. It has to do with the law enforcement bit of the law.
But then there's the issue of land administration bit. Because today, people buy lands. And I mean, Kwame Gyan, we've had this conversation before. Just recently, someone was telling me how long it took him to get a title to his land. And in conversations, we have become aware of how things could even happen when you have acquired the land legitimately. Why is it still a problem today for people to genuinely and legitimately acquire lands, hence do away with the fights?
It's not that easy to answer this question. You know, the structure of land holdings in this country itself is a source of worry.
Okay.
Ghana comprises of about 238,000 square kilometers
Yeah.
of land mass, divided into 16 political regions and 258 or so district and municipal and metro assemblies. Population of about 32 million, not so.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in this land space, about 80% of the land is owned, if I will use that word advisedly now, owned or controlled by traditional land owning groups. So families, clans, stools, and so on. About 20% of this land mass is land acquired by the state from the traditional land owning groups.
Sure.
There are multiplicity of owners in the same area. So within Accra, there are the big groups, Nungwa, Teshi, La, Osu, Jamestown. There is a small enclave from around Cadbury to the fire service area.
Okay.
There is Jamestown, Sempe, Asren, even Jamestown, there is Akumaje. That small area has about 5 paramounces. That small area. And each of these groups control land. They are the land owning groups settled at the coast, and their subjects farmed in the hinterland.
Okay.
So you see the coastline,
Yeah.
Jamestown, all the way to Nungwa towards Tema. Then go to the hinterland. Amamole, Ablekuma, Bawe, Hacho, Boy, Pantan, Amrahia. All these areas, Bawaleshi, Otele, these areas are all gang areas.
Yeah.
But there are different gang groups. Asaliboche. Then, I mean, if you go into these areas, you move from Teshi area to Osu area to La area, you may not even notice. For many people, they don't know that they just move from a Teshi enclave to a La enclave around aviation. You wouldn't notice. So the first question one would ask is, what's the boundary between these guys?
Exactly.
Many years ago, we knew the boundaries.
So
many
what
years.
What changed?
Yes, when land was commodified, when land became a commodity, and land became tradable, and a matter of cash, everybody decided not to tell the truth about their boundaries. So even when one group was given land to settle on by another group, they are in contest now as to who owns where. So from the beginning, we've had uncertainties of title. And when we had uncertainties of title, we have used the medium of the law to deal with title uncertainties, which has led to insecure tenures.
Okay.
So, Timo was talking about the Land Act. It took 17 years to put it together.
Yes.
So, it means that for those of us who were involved in designing the legal architecture, we have done an excellent job. We have done an excellent job to provide a certain foundation for dealing with the mundane issues about the sector. So, for example, new rules have been set out on registration of title and deeds and so on. So, if those things are done, one would achieve certain results within a certain time frame. But Timo knows, we still have not been able to enact the regulations for the implementation of the Land Act. And under normal circumstances, the regulations should have been worked on side by side as the substantive bill was going through the processes. So by the time the bill was ready for passage, you will have a fair idea of what regulations you need to be able to give teeth to the Land Act.
Yeah. But you see, for instance, you talk about the establishment of a customary land secretariat, which shall, at the end of every 3 months, submit to the Lands Commission and the Office of the Administrator of Two Lands records of each transaction recorded by the customary land secretariat.
But if you read further, it says, and that's where I pick up from where Senior Kwame was talking about the fact that the regulations so if you read further, it will say that this will be guided by legislative regulation
Yes,
yes, I see that.
Which have not been
Yes,
done.
exactly at the beginning of this.
Yes, so that regulation, mind you, this customary land secretariats have now been enacted in law, but were being done under the land administration project. That's where the pilots began. That's where the experiment with it started, where we were encouraged. But that one was not by law. As I said, during the 17 years of this architecture of this Land Act, we saw that there was wisdom in making this law because it's very critical. The LIs, as he speaks now, the contracts for the LI was done ending of last year because of the processes of procurement, because we needed a no objection for particular consultants, specific consultants who had worked on the act to facilitate it. The engagements have begun. The major stakeholder engagements for Tamale was slated by end of this beginning of July. It's a 1-year contract that should be ending by November, where it will be put before this current parliament to see. The allies, as he says in themselves, will come and guide the implementation. They may have delayed, but it's about 2 years since the law passed. Roughly 3 years this year.
3 years, yes.
3 years. It may have delayed, but once again, a good law without good implementation will not put us where we should be. Assuming today the LI is there now, and customary land secretaries begin to be established, and he explains again that the difficulties of who owns what still remains. If you have a good customary land secretary,
Why does that still remain?
because he explains the nature of our land owning ownership. If you go to the French-speaking countries, where the policy of assimilation was. Do you have a challenge with ownership? No. Ghana lost that opportunity. We didn't decide to go that way. The 20% of land that government owns is what we always, and mind you, out of that 20%, half of it is the Kosovo Dam. It is the management of that, the certainty of its title, largely, is what gives people the comfort to run to that.
So
Yes.
I'll add to what he's saying.
Yes.
Why is everybody
Rushing for
trying to take land in cantonments and range?
Tell me.
Yes.
Because the title is secure.
It's secure.
Primarily. Maybe 98%. You know why? Because the hands of the state was involved in the acquisition and the setting out
Yes.
of that place. But you see, the flip side of what Timo is saying is this. If the state had taken over all the ownership of the lands, you would have created a public service
Yes.
system to manage the lands on behalf of the state. Now, we have issues with the Lands Commission because we think that in some cases their systems for allocating public lands are not open, are not transparent, politicized, and so on. But look at the other side, where we left it in the hands of the traditional owners. But there is still something else that we could have done.
Which is?
The state could still allow owners to own their land, but the state should have taken charge of land use.
Yes.
Okay.
You see, there are two issues. One, who owns the land? And the next, who applies the land for what purpose? When you were talking about the landguards, and when Prof was talking about the landguards, you know, I was nodding in approval. Landguards are a law enforcement matter.
Yeah. Purely.
Landguards are a law enforcement matter. The problem of uncertainty of titles, is simply fueling.
Yes. Yes, the catalyst.
Is fueling a deficiency
In our-
in law enforcement.
So why don't we take that away?
So those of us who did work on passing the laws, I'm telling you that what we did with the Land Act, brilliant work. Enforcing the Land Act is another level. And even where the regulations are not yet in place, we could still enforce the Land Act. Because you don't have to wait for the legislation, the LI to enforce Section 12. And the Section 12 that you read is a different kind of arrangement from the provisions of the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act. You know, when they passed the Vigilantism and Related Offences Act, they specifically mentioned land guards.
Yeah.
And defined land guards and said they have prohibited the activities of land guards. So by law, land guards and their activities have been prohibited. But you saw the people who passed this law said they were passing a law to prevent and prohibit the activities of vigilantes and land guards. Why not vigilantes and prostitutes?
Tell me.
So what is the relationship between vigilantes and the land guards?
Tell me.
They are mutually not exclusive. They give birth to each other. It's the vigilantes who are also the land guards.
Okay.
And they simply came up because landowners wanted to use them. As we are speaking, real estate agents and real estate developers are also using them.
Oh, really?
And you heard one individual who sent a message. Individuals are also using them.
Yes.
And it is also partly because of, one, law enforcement, which may not be available, which may not be expeditious, which may not be fair and transparent. So it's a combination, a whole lot of things are playing out at the same time.
Okay. We'll get back to this. We'll get back to this. I mean, because
and you know, one of the recommendations I'll make to the IGP.
Okay.
The IGP is one of the people that I respect a lot. The IGP should begin a process of reviewing who he is posting as police commanders to the peri-urban areas. If we as a country want to deal with the problem of landguards, the IGP should watch who are posted as commanders and personnel in the peri-urban areas. You know, landguard issues are prevalent in the peri-urban areas. Like I was saying the last time, the peri-urban zones are those parts of the country where I'll use a very graphic example. When you see the roof color changes, you know, when you are in your village, the serene village environment, there were no pink roofs and blue roofs. So when you see the blue roofs coming, it means you are in the area where land conversion is taking place, where farmland is being converted to commercial and residential uses. Those are the areas where the landguards are. So the IGP should plan his life to post police personnel with a certain degree of competence and integrity to those areas. Look, places like Amasaman, Ashaman, Afienya, Kaswa, he didn't worry himself about cantonments. But these areas are where ineffective policing is giving birth and nurturing these kinds of behaviors. So we need to get law enforcement right on the ground.
Okay.
And I'll add some other recommendations as we go.
Yes, as we go along, because this morning we're joined by Kwame Gyan, who is senior law lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School and former legal consultant to the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Timothy Anyidoho is acting Greater Accra Regional Lands Officer, Lands Commission, and we're having a conversation about the landguard menace and how you can deal with it. Earlier you heard from Professor Kwesi Aning. When we return after this break, we'll continue with the conversation, read a lot of your thoughts. Hopefully we're able to activate the phone line so you can join us. We'll be right back.
Your morning radio.
Okay, so let's continue with the conversation. Kwame Gyan and Timothy Anyidoho are still here with us. I mean, I want to understand something. We know these persons, don't we? I mean, how do they come about that it's so difficult for us to deal with them?
Winston, to give you a short answer, these guys, they do multiple things. And they have multiple alignments. So the same guys are landguards, they are vigilantes, they are armed robbers, they are virtually organized criminals. And because they are also like utility players, they help individuals and somehow politicians who need the services of people who are reckless and who don't value their own lives. So they are kind of ingrained in the system. So they have protection. You know, they would have protection. So anytime there is, go back to this thing that happened in Botiano last week. You saw all the calls for this inquiry, that inquiry, this inquiry. Nobody has come out to say, oh, what are we going to do about landguards to nip this thing in the bud? Everybody is talking about the people who have died. How about all the people who have died, who have been maimed, who have lost their properties through the actions of landguards? Who is talking for those people?
When you say they are utility players, is it the case these guys are becoming like an organized group, more like a mafia group now?
That's the way I see them. They are organized criminals. They are located in particular areas where they hold sway over large territories. And, you know, they operate like male lizards. They don't encroach on each other's territories. A landguard at Amra here wouldn't come and participate in an operation at Kaswa. No. Because they are very territorial. So the
So
enclave,
it means they know themselves.
they know, and everybody knows them. Everybody knows them, and they are very territorial. You don't move and encroach on territories. If you move in, you have to let the other guys know that you are coming. They will say, "This is our area, don't come," and they won't go.
So, as it
So over a period, if we are not careful, they will be kind of, they would have taken particular areas of the country hostage, and they would virtually exclude law enforcement from access to those areas. That's why some of us are worried that law enforcement should act swiftly and decisively. Law enforcement should act swiftly and decisively, even if it means loss of some lives. Why not?
Tim, let me bring you in because I mean, listening to this now, if we know these people, I mean, then it should be easy for us to deal with them. Then,
Yeah, so that's simple. Like we say, if the law says those who incite, those who encourage, so you don't go for only them, you go for those who give them the authority to do so or support them. And like what's being said now, it is how engraved they are. If you steal your meat in your mother's soup and they catch you, the way they treat you would encourage you whether you go back there to pick it up or you don't do it. And it's the fact that, and as Prof. Anin said, if I know this person is engaged in this, he's been caught. He's just given a slap on his wrist. In 2 years' time, he's back. Why wouldn't he be more emboldened? You are reporting him to a police station and he's even laughing at you because he doesn't feel that the law would punish him. It takes him 2 years to go through trial. Bail, he's bailable. He's bailed. So whilst even the case is going on, he's terrorizing you. So, and he has very little. And I say, if it's something, and I come back to what we keep saying, if we don't deal with it now, it seems to be an urban problem in the more pricey land areas. So anytime demand goes somewhere, we may be taking this problem along with us.
Exactly.
You may not find it in my small village in somewhere in the Volta region.
It will go there
but
one day.
the day that some small oil or coconut or something is found there and people think that it's valuable, it moves with us. So we should not see it as a matter left only for a certain region. But anywhere things become more pricey, if we don't nib it in the bud now, like the Galamsey, like all those other menaces, it will chase us there. We deal with it now. And deal with it as a criminal offense more than tying it to mere protection of land or landguardism. As he said, it's a multifaceted. It is crime that has had facets and added land as part of its problems.
you know, we still have other angles to explore and even get to listen to your concerns. So, gentlemen, Kwame, Gyan, and Timothy Anyidoho, we need to do this tomorrow. Kwame Gyan says in the interest of God and country, particularly in the interest of the country Ghana, he's going to be joining us tomorrow. So will Timothy Anyidoho be joining us. So we get to, listen to your calls. Because I am concerned that if care is not taken, these people could cut areas away where there will be no law enforcement.
Virtually they have.
Virtually they have.
And they begin to terrorize
Virtually
people.
they have.
This is definitely not what we want. And is the reason we should be concerned. Tomorrow we'll be addressing your concerns. We'll be picking calls and getting answers to your questions. But now we'll go for a short break. Thank you very much, Kwame Gyan, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Law School and former legal consultant to the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. And to you, Timothy Anyidoho, who is acting Greater Accra Regional Lands Officer at the Lands Commission.